Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Badass Marketing. I am joined with my co-host Angela Duns. Angela, how are you this morning?
Very well. How about yourself, Mike?
I am good. I have actually gotten my act together. I combed my hair. I shaved. This is supposed to be a podcast, but there's a video too, so I figured I'd try to look pretty today. So
You are very pretty.
thank you. I appreciate that. So I know that we had a topic, but you know me, I don't always like to strict. It's going to be a tough day. Stick to the script. So I want to talk about something completely different, and I want to talk about generative AI, and I want to talk about what this means for search. And what I'm not talking about, because it's a totally different topic, and I don't know that there's a good answer for it, is using generative AI for content and how that impacts search. So we're not talking about that. That's a totally different subject. We may talk about it on another podcast, but right now, I want to talk about something that I've seen and that I am genuinely concerned about. So Google has recently launched a new product, which is part of Bard, I think it is, right? So a generative AI tool that you can use in search. So let me launch our screen and show you what I'm talking about.
And I think this is very timely because the last topic that we talked about was SEO, and
Right.
this greatly affects everything.
Yeah, if it just doesn't kill it in general. But so this is in beta, so this is something that we're testing and something that Google's testing. And I asked it, I'm looking at exploring different platforms and was wondering how I would go about importing an existing WordPress site into the Ghost platform, which is another hosting platform to host websites. So I asked it this question, and it generated via its generative AI a response. So the thing that strikes me about this response is I'm less to do with the response in general, but just sort of the formatting is now that Google has this tool, they've provided a very comprehensive, one will assume correct. It's in beta, so maybe it's slightly inaccurate. We don't know until we try it. But it has provided a comprehensive response to my question. And it is taking up a huge amount of real estate in the Google search uh, response.
Almost two screens.
Right. So my question is, you know, and I have had, something that I guess maybe verges on the, border of a conspiracy theory that Google's plan is to ultimately make their product so that you never leave Google, right? That you never have a reason to leave Google. And I think this further demonstrates that because with this comprehensive answer, I have everything I need for my response. And I don't need to go anywhere else. And whether you're using Chat GPT, and I ask Chat GPT questions all the time as well, or you're now using the new Google tool, you know, do I ever need to visit a website? Because Google gave me all the answers I need. What do you think, Angela?
Oh, I think this is a pivotal moment and going to be a game changer, and it's worth watching very, very closely in the upcoming weeks. It's a little bit scary because if they give you the answer up front, first of all, what's going to happen to the ads, all of the paid stuff? We hate to see it. And we don't see it in this view at all. There's no side panel. There's nothing that smacks of an ad here, but there also isn't any links to organic websites that are going to give us an answer either. So, what's going to happen to driving traffic to websites organically using Google search? What's going to happen? Oh boy. Yeah, this really raises a lot of questions. Way more than, you know, yes, on one hand, this is an improvement. You get straight to your answer right away. And as you said, whether it's accurate or not, it looks very comprehensive, step by step, easy to follow, takes up a lot of real estate. So I think we're really at a pivotal moment. You know, how are they going to keep their model, their business model behind all of this without the paid ads? And I suppose by keeping you here forever on their platform is how they plan to do that.
Yeah. So, first of all, let's start with the fact that this is a beta. So, this is not what you may ultimately see. I would be hard pressed to believe that you won't see, that sidebar that currently looks empty, um, is perfect for serving up ads. And for example, let me stop sharing and show you another one because apparently that's the only way I can change tabs. So, I did an additional search, and I searched LinkedIn Badass, who is our co-host, and this is what it gave me back. There is nothing about Angela here. We'll explain that in a minute. But as you can see, there is area over here where some LinkedIn and CBS, so relative and relevant content is popping up on the right period. So in this particular case, it is not empty like it was in the first one that we saw. Maybe the question that we asked in the first one was very specific, so there wasn't existing or relevant content to answer it per se. But clearly, when you look at this format and this response, which is generated by the same tool, there is a placeholder and content that is available above the fold that is not Google content. So I have no concerns about whether or not Google is compromising its business model. It's not. They figured this out. Their ads aren't going away, and we do not need to lose sleep over whether Google will lose money over generative AI. I think what this clearly demonstrates is that Google is aware of tools like ChatGPT and has done a considerable job in coming up with a solution for their product. I had seen some of the earlier ones, and it was like, oh, that's ugly and that's a mess. This is, this new tool, in my opinion, is pretty good. So, I'm not concerned that Google will lose revenue. I really am not. I think they're fine. I'm sure they have figured out the business model as it relates to generative AI. I think what this does is very smartly the concern, and we've seen this in articles over the last couple of months, was like, has ChatGPT killed Google? And I think the answer is no. I think the answer is Google is smart enough to figure it out. They might have been a little behind the ball, but they clearly have figured it out, and we'll continue to work on it. And so from a business model perspective, I think Google's fine. I think this is their natural response to Chat GPT and sort of all the buzz that it's getting. I think there's plenty of room for ads. What I still remain concerned about is, despite there being room for ads, is you need to scroll or go beyond the scroll in order to start to see organic content. So and then when you do
Well,
scroll, go
yes. And what freaks me out is you never see my website.
ahead. You don't, but your website's relatively new, and it's something that we need to work on to help you come up with the visibility. But
Relatively
what's
light.
you know, but what's nice is, I don't know what's nice for you, but it's nice for us, is that um, you know, understanding e-commerce, which is our site, when we interviewed you, that does come up. So it does show. Obviously, it's pretty far down there, which is not great, but we're working on that. But for me, this is a genuine concern because what I have concerns about is Google's goal is to keep you on Google products. It will answer everything you need without ever having to leave Google. Of course, it will serve up ads. And so I'm not concerned about that. Um, but what I am concerned about from an SEO perspective and from a visibility and brand awareness is I think this is going to make it harder and harder, if not impossible, to rank on Google, which still controls somewhere between 85 and 90% of the search market. So, I'm not going to go down the doom and gloom, and, and I'm going to stop short of calling it a conspiracy theory, but I don't know based on this um, where the ability to rank is going, because I think it's going to become harder and harder. We've seen over time that Google has, reduced the real estate on this landing page. It used to be you get like 15 or 20 answers, then they reduced it down to 10, then they reduced it down to 7. Now, if they deploy this product across the board, and it's in beta, so you won't see it unless you've signed up for it. But once they deploy this across the board, it's going to take up, a large chunk of the real estate on the landing page and primarily above the fold. So I think that's going to make it harder and harder for folks to rank on Google. What does that mean?
Yes.
I think that means numerous things. One, we've talked about this, is the omni-channel marketing approach. You can't just simply rely on Google as your sole source. Um, I don't think this will kill websites. I think that folks that want to do business with you will still go to your website to verify that you're real and look at your websites. But I do acknowledge that I think this is going to make ranking and visibility harder and harder.
And I think there's a case for being much more intentional about how you drive traffic to your website, because Google is not going to be the only place that you want to use to drive traffic to your website. You want to use the channels where your ideal clients are to drive traffic directly to your website.
So I'm going to stop share for a minute and I'm going to start it again. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but apparently I can't figure it out. So what I'm wondering is if I bring up something a little more specific, where I'm looking for something, um, we're tequila fans, right? So I'm going to search for a particular brand of tequila, and I want to see whether or not, if I'm doing a product search, what the generative AI does. Okay. So again, I happen to be running ads for this particular product. So the first thing it shows me, again, a Google product, but it's showing me that I have ads and I'm running ads, because the first thing it wants to do is acknowledge that it's taking my money, which is very nice. So apparently the Google business model is fine, because the first thing it shows me is that it's taking my money. But the second thing it shows me, and again, it's taken up a considerable amount of real estate, is, in response to my search of G4 tequila, it tells me who G4 tequila is. And there you see the ads, right? So Drizzly, Total Wine, Beverly Hills, something, which I'm assuming is some sort of liquor store. So there are your ads. So your ads aren't gone. They will be there. And especially, in this particular case, it was less of a question and more of a product search.
Right. Right. So interesting.
Right. So ads will continue to play a part in this. What's interesting is if we continue to scroll down, so there is the website. The first entry is G4 Tequila, which is obviously the website of the company that makes it. And then you're starting to see some of the additional content, basically from other retailers. But what's really interesting is you're still taking up a fair amount of real estate. And if you're a person who doesn't tend to scroll, which is most of us, it serves up enough ads that if I'm looking for this product, I can click on Drizzly and go to Drizzly and buy G4.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think it's interesting that, this is what we're seeing. I think that, it's going to make SEO a little more challenging, right?
Yes.
If you want to rank for G4 tequila, apparently you're going to need to buy an ad. So that further supports, the Google. If you're just looking for general information, there's enough information about G4, so you don't need to leave Google. If you actually want a product, there are, people have paid for ads and they are prominently featured.
Well, the information is pretty good, though. I mean, as far as general information is concerned, that really tells you kind of a story right there in 3 paragraphs.
Right. And then, and there's an option to show more. So again, if that didn't satisfy everything you need, there's more information, again, without ever leaving Google.
And it suggests several other questions as well, or topics that you could look at.
Yeah, so that's a feature that Google has always done, which is said here's what
Or
people are
near
searching
me.
for. Yeah, G4 tequila near me. Let's see who comes up.
I hope it's the corner shop.
I hope it is too, since we're paying for an ad. Safeway. Thank you. Not the answer I was hoping for.
Whoops. Oh,
Yeah. So Flatiron is that. So what's interesting, but and then you'll also, I don't think you may have noticed this, but we're pretty hypersensitive to this. The ads have changed. So we're not seeing the same group of ads that we
right.
saw the first time.
Dip.
So the ad model seems very safe. There's still plenty of opportunity to present ads on Google. So the question is, and I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm sure you're going to throw it back at me, but so what do we do? How do we respond to this? Because we don't have any answers yet, but the question is, what do we do for something like this?
Very closely, and we really take control of how we drive traffic to our websites.
I would concur, and then again, to beat a dead horse, we're going to look at an omni-channel approach, right? So if your clients are on LinkedIn and that's a primary source for those types, then we're obviously going to do more efforts that are targeted on the platforms where our clients reside, so that we can get in front of our clients where they are versus waiting for them to find us via Google.
And this is another case where your newsletter is really a great way to get in front of your clients because that's something that you're going to do through email or, there is a subscription for a newsletter on LinkedIn as well. There's other platforms you can use for newsletters, but newsletters are going to become more important than ever if this is the way things are going to be.
Yeah, and to echo that, I also think that it's tremendously important to, I like and use the LinkedIn's newsletter feature, but the drawback to the LinkedIn newsletter feature is I don't have those people's emails. So
Yes.
if LinkedIn decides tomorrow that it doesn't love me anymore, and it's been known to do that because I've been known to do things that apparently make the internet gods unhappy, I don't have direct contact with those folks. So I think it's also important that while we can use these channels to reach people, ultimately the holy grail is to get a direct contact with them. Whether we're talking about a newsletter, where we're talking about SMS marketing, where we have text permission. Obviously, all of this is permission based and opted in. But to be successful, we need to be able to touch people directly. And I think relying on tools like Google, which is obviously going to protect its own brand, and was happy to sell us ads, but we have little or no control when they appear, and we get into a bidding war, we get into click issues. Obviously, if an ad is popular, it appears more often because more people click it, and makes Google more money. If your ad doesn't result in clicks, they're not going to rank it very high. So even paying for an ad isn't just enough. So
Right.
I think when it comes to you know brand awareness, it's about how can you touch your customers directly. Can you get them to sign up for a newsletter so you can email them? Do they allow you to send text messages? You
And
know,
you get them to a landing page.
so I mean, what's interesting is very soon, you will see some brand new glasses. So that's something very exciting for my audience to look forward to. The only reason I mention that is because my total interaction with my local optometrist is via text. They remind me when things, like, oh, you're due for an appointment. Oh, you have an appointment tomorrow. Don't forget to sign up. So, they have opted for permission-based messaging through SMS. I'm fine with that. I like it. It's timely. But they can touch me directly. They send me reminders. They tell me when my glasses are ready. They tell me when my appointments are. So, we really need to focus on how do we touch our clients directly versus going through third-party channels like the Google search, LinkedIn platforms. I'm not suggesting you not be there because that's all part of the overall omni-channel brand awareness strategy. But ultimately, what we need to do is to um, move those people onto a direct contact.
Right. And that will become more and more important for prospects as well as clients as we move forward in this crazy new marketing landscape.
And then the question becomes, at least in my mind, how do we get people to agree to receive our content?
Know, like, and trust.
Know, like, and trust. I mean, we have to, we can't simply advertise to them in our newsletters, right? We have to provide something that they perceive as value. So our content has to be relative to what they're looking for. It has to solve something that they are looking to address. So it's really, once you get them on the hook, which is signing up for your newsletter, then you better deliver. Otherwise, they're
Yes.
going to opt out. I opt out. I sign up for everything, but I also spend a considerable amount of time opting out if I'm not, happy with what I'm receiving. Because we had this discussion before we launched the podcast today. I suffer from shiny object syndrome, so I like to sign up for stuff. But then I get cranky because my inbox is full, and then I go through. If it's not working for me, then I go ahead and I unsubscribe. Sometimes that takes a couple buttons apparently, but so
Subscribe from things is because it's not personalized to us. It's not what we thought it was going to be.
well, either it's not what we thought it was going to be, or it's just not providing value, right? Because we signed up for something for whatever reason, it seemed like it was going to provide value, and then when it turns out it's really just a sales pitch. So if
Right.
or it's just not relevant to what I'm looking for. It may be a perfectly good newsletter, but it's not really what I need, so I don't need to follow up with it. I you know if you know a little bit about my history, I lived in Europe for a while, then I'm back in the States. So in the last couple of months, we've been back over a year. I've been unsubscribing from some newsletters that were European based because that's not really as relevant to me these days. So there's nothing wrong with those newsletters; they're perfectly fine. But however, since I no longer live there, they're not as relevant to me. But I think this puts the emphasis on, once you get them on the hook, once you get them to sign up, and getting them to sign up is no easy task, and we can talk about that. But you really need to provide them something of value in order to keep them and to keep them on your list. Um, I was working with a client recently, actually, it was sometime last week, and we were going through, they hadn't gone through and cleaned up their newsletter list in forever. I mean, literally forever. And, so they had this giant list that they were very, very proud of. And, I said, okay, that's cool. And the first thing I said was, okay, let's check the bounces. And more than 30% of the list had bounced. So that giant list just got cut in a third, right? And then the next thing you look at is, well, you know, the remaining 70% or so, how many people are opening your newsletter? And then that is a whole nother issue. So, is there a compelling, subject line to make them to want to open it? Is it personalized? Do they feel like they're talking to them? All those types of things that we will talk about in, further editions, but really about getting people engaged so that they remain subscribed, and that they, when you do want to send them that occasional marketing messages, it filters through the noise, that it's not just one more email that they delete from their inbox.
Yes, exactly.
So you have a newsletter, do you not?
I do. I love my newsletter.
What kind of feedback do you get on your newsletter? That why do people sign up for it, and why do they stay?
Um, I get really good feedback on my newsletter. I mean, I think it's really good feedback because it seems like, each one touches a different segment. And so I get feedback from a huge variety of different people. And one of the things that people tell me is that it's just jam packed with value. And, I hear that almost every single newsletter. I hear that from somebody, it's like, wow, Angela, this one could have been a mini course, so those are the kinds of things that keep me motivated to continue to provide value because those people are faithful. They never miss an issue. My open rate is part of what keeps me motivated. Um, and the fact that a lot of it gets shared out to other people. My newsletter gets forwarded to other people. So my newsletter for me is golden. And the feedback that I get, even if it's bad feedback, I welcome that. If I miss the mark on a
There's
certain,
no such thing as bad feedback. It might have been negative
no, there
feedback, but it
isn't.
might no such thing as bad feedback, right?
And that just keeps me sharp. So I love getting feedback of any kind. Of course we love the good feedback, but it's the negative feedback that helps us be better.
Right. Because I mean the good feedback, while it's a nice warm and fuzzy, it's just an echo chamber. Like, like, oh, we love what you write about. Like, okay, so I'm gonna continue I write
Yep.
about what I write about. But
Your fan club is not always the best place to get feedback from.
right. But the negative feedback, like, oh, you missed the mark, or why aren't you talking about this? Or, what about that? That gives us some insights into like what people might also be interested in. If, either we're missing the mark or, there are other topics that are available to us to discuss so that we get a wider audience and a greater reach. But, at the end of the day, I think the answer is you got to get a personal connection, whether
Yes.
whether it's email or texts or whatever it is, and then you better provide them value if you want to keep them.
And I think one of the best pieces of feedback that I've ever gotten about my newsletter is one of my clients said, Angela, it just feels like you're sitting across the table from me talking to me. And that, if you can do that with your writing and really touch people in a personal and emotional way, people are going to stay faithful.
So I know this week we were supposed to talk about newsletters, and I guess we did indirectly, but we will probably revisit this topic next week because in greater depth, because we sort of got sidetracked because I like shiny things, and this was what was shiny on
That
my.
is what marketing is all about. And the whole idea that we're staying relevant, we're on top of what's happening in real time.
We think we're
So,
relevant. Yeah, exactly.
exactly.
As long as we think we're relevant, the rest doesn't matter, right? But again, we appreciate you joining us. We appreciate you listening. If you like us, make a message down below. If there's something you think we missed, or you have some insights about how Google is going to take over the world, or generative AI, or Chat GPT, we'd love to hear your comments because we don't know. Generally, we see some red flags as to where this is going, but we don't have any answers at this point in time. If you have some great insights, we would love to hear them. If you have some crazy off the wall conspiracy theories, we'll be amused. I don't know other than that, but it'll be, it was like, oh, that was 5 minutes of my life. But so again, we appreciate you joining us, Angela. As always, I love spending time with you, and we will see you in the next episode of Badass Marketing.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.